Hi everyone, welcome back. So I've seen lately a lot of questions about negative rake scrapers, how to shape one, what angle to sharpen one, should you use a negative rake scraper versus standard scraper. And now I've talked a little bit about this before, pretty much in every scraper video that I did. However, I just want to show you in this video that it doesn't really matter. It's not like a religious war that you have to use one or the other. Now there are some differences between the two, between the standard scraper and the negative rake scraper in terms of how to use them, what is more maybe safer for beginner or maybe more advanced tool. And I hope in this video I'm going to clarify that a little bit. So these are the 4 tools I'm going to use. Now don't mind the grind on this ball gouge. It's something that I've playing around, so the grind here doesn't matter for this video at least. Now the standard scraper, which I use probably the most, is the shear scraper. It's around 45-degree bevel. It has a flat top here and it has a burr here. And now this burr is straight from the grinder. I'll probably through the video I'm going to roll the hook, so it's much more aggressive for me and works better for me, gets better finish. And now the star of the video is negative rake scraper. And now the last few days I've been playing around with the negative rake scrapers, just trying to find maybe the best angle that works for me, so I can then show you that angle and that approach and what you can do with negative rake scrapers. It's sort of a common theme that it's only like to braid the surface just before the sanding, but it's a little bit more in depth about these negative rake scrapers. Now this particular grind here, or the angles, is something that I've seen from Steve Jones. If you don't know who he is, he's a production turner, I believe in England, and his great grandfather used negative rake scrapers similar to this. So in terms of angle, let me just find the protractor. So the angle here is on the bottom around 55 degrees and on the top is around 15 degrees. So if I would place a scraper like so, now this is old beat up protractor, don't mind that. Like I said, I rarely use protractors, but for this occasion I thought I'll show you. So if I set this, so this is around, you can see 55 degrees, the primary bevel, the bevel underneath here. So this is the bottom, and the shallower bevel here on the top is around 15 degrees. So let me just adjust that so you'll see. So that's roughly there. So the included angle would be around 70 degrees, which works okay. Everything basically beneath 80 degrees will work, and above maybe 50 degrees, something like that. You don't want to be too acute on a bevel, 2 bevels here, much like on a skew, because that will it will make the very edge more fragile. So I find this works quite well, this Steve Jones, let's say, style of sharpening the bevels. And the other one is same grind, same bevel angles, but this one is sort of a curve, so you'll see how I would use this one as well. I'll sharpen these. I don't normally use negative rake scrapers, but as you'll see in this video, you can do a lot with these. It's not just to smooth out the surface, you can do really a lot with them. Now some of the stuff that I'm going to show you in this video, the techniques and everything, is maybe a little bit more advanced. Now please, if you don't find these techniques that I'm about to show you comfortable using, then please by all means find another way. There is another thing that I want to point out. That's the beauty of wood turning. There is no single way or single proper way of doing stuff, much like with any other stuff in our lives. So basically we all drive the cars a little differently, but we all get to the point from point A to point B. Same in wood turning, we all have a little bit different approach, maybe different preferences in angles, but that doesn't mean that one tool is better than the other or vice versa. Now I do agree that on some occasions some tools work better than others, but you just have to adapt to what you are comfortable with, what your level of skills are, and just adapt to that. And again, you'll see some of the stuff that are not let's say usual in terms of negative rake scraper in this video, but I'm about to show you that. I might even show you a catch. I'll do it on purpose so you don't do it by yourself, or at least you know how to avoid it. But we'll see. I'm not too keen on that because scraper catches can be quite violent. So now, in terms of sharpening, I won't show you the grinder, the process that I go through. It's just basically the platform sharpening, so it's not really that difficult, much like any other scraper or parting tool or skew chisel. The same process is for the negative rake scraper. So you're only putting maybe two different types of bevels, or you can go with the same bevels. So if you're using like 40-40 grind, you'll have the platform set to 40 degrees, and you can use those two angles. Again, that will be 80. That will work okay. Maybe a little less than that. Just have to play around. Usually I don't use negative rake scrapers, and throughout the video I'll tell you why. However, the last few days that I've been playing around with these two, so I can show you a little bit more about this. You can do really a ton of stuff with only these two scrapers. Forgot to mention, if I put the ruler here at 90 degrees, you'll see this scraper is slightly at an angle. So that's really, if I put it that will be maybe 2 degrees or something like that. So now, just a little curve, or you can do a straight line to the left or right, whatever suits your needs. I prefer to have more of a point on this right side, so I can get into a little bit more of a corner. What I have here is a blank of maple, ball blank. It still has a rough diameter and rough face here, so we're going to chew everything up using scrapers or gouge. But this particular batch of maple isn't all that user-friendly like many other maples. Now, there is a reason I like using standard scraper, and that is first, the burr will last you a little bit longer, at least with the steels that I have. So M2 steels. Now this one is cryogenic, and for the same sake, this one is as well from the crown. But usually the burr on a single bevel tool like this will last you a bit longer. Usually on a negative rake scraper, the burr will last you around half a minute or so, maybe even less, depend on the wood. But that's the reason I like especially the rolled hook, because it's a little bit more of an aggressive hook, and again, it's not maybe the most easiest or user-friendly tool when you have the rolled hook to use. The reason, again, to point out, the purpose of this video is not to promote standard scraper versus negative rake scraper. I just want to point out that there are different ways of getting the job done. For instance, to get the best possible surface on this particular ball blank, so you don't have to sand as much. We all have the same goal pretty much. How we get there doesn't really matter. So although I'm using standard scrapers a lot and not negative rake scrapers, I do not preach about scrapers that these are only tools that you have to use. So keep that in mind. Just find the tools that you're comfortable with. And now with the standard scraper, you have to have the negative negative angle to the surface you're scraping. So this particular surface here, it's now currently uneven. However, I still want to raise the handle slightly above the cutting edge here. So, and I'm scraping at the center. So you can see here the center. Now I can bring the speed up. This is quite small blank. So 1300 RPM, that works again for me. Usually when I would use a scraper to flatten this, I would go from outside in. You see that takes out wood really nice. Now with the negative rake scraper, you don't have to let's say have the handle slightly higher than the cutting edge here. Because of that secondary bevel on top, it gives you a little bit of leeway. Although I always recommend so that you get in a habit of holding the handle like that. Now the negative rake scraper, the major benefit is that negative rake, the two angles here, it doesn't feed itself into the wood. So if I place it here, the handle is a little above the cutting edge here. It's much more neutral, and still you can see that works really nice. Really nice shavings. The surface is pristine, at least for the feel, and you'll see the surface in a few seconds. But major advantage is this doesn't feed itself in. Many will say that if you just raise the handle, you will have this negative rake here, and it doesn't feed itself, or it is a negative rake scraper. Now, to get the standard scraper, in my opinion, to get it into negative rake approach, you'll have to tilt it up on its side. Now it's shear scrape, but now it won't, because it's a different kind of approach, it doesn't want to feed itself in. Just to chew this up, it's much difficult to feed it in. It doesn't want to feed itself in. It's less grabby, and now I would consider this a negative rake scraper, not just by raising the handle, because these two are the forces here. You have the flat top and the bottom here parallel. It wants to feed itself in no matter what. That secondary angle on top will give you a little bit more of a buffer zone, and it doesn't want to feed itself in. So I can push real hard in. I get really big shavings, you can see here, but I'm quite safe. If I would do that the same here, still I'm holding it, but I'm fighting it a little bit more. You can see again, I took a lot of wood off. Oops. But it's something not so recommended, especially on a standard scraper, to use all of the edge at once. It's really dangerous, and you will have a catch. So I decided to move the camera a little bit to the right, so the shavings don't hit the lens as fast. So again, the standard scrapers, the reason I like using them so much is when you use them properly, they are really nice tool to use. Again, I have to have the negative 90-degree angle here, otherwise it will have a catch. It will draw itself down. It's not pleasant, and you just have to consider this. With the negative rake scraper, I can bring the handle down a little bit, and you can still see I'm still getting nice shavings. I didn't get the catch, so I can still have a really nasty catch with a negative rake scraper. So if I drop the handle down like so, now the top bevel here is, let's say, flat, perfectly flat. If I drop it a little bit further down, now it's pointing up, much like a standard scraper. If I hold the handle a little bit past the flat, towards down, you will still get a massive catch. So there is a little bit of a leeway room or a buffer zone with the negative rake scraper, so that's a major advantage. You can still use the negative rake scraper sort of as a roughing scraper. You just have to drop the handle down a little bit more from the flat. Although I don't recommend that, usually that will depends on the angle you have on top, that can invite a massive catch. So usually I don't recommend that, and you just have to be aware where your top bevel angle is. But I'm just going to show you this. So this is with the handle slightly down. You can still see I've taken a lot of wood off, and the surface is nice and clean. That you can't get much better surface than this from the scraper or any other tool actually. I'll just show you this. So I hope this will pick up on the camera nicely. So really nice, pristine, smooth surface. Straight from the negative rake scraper, mostly in sort of a roughing stage, or roughing position I should say. Now I can get pretty much the same surface using a standard scraper. Just let the wood come down to the tool, do not force it in. With a standard scraper you have to have that feel, so you just sort of gliding over the surface. Richard likes to say you stroke the surface, but this again is a really nice surface here on the side grain. So in terms of like promoting one or the other, it doesn't really matter. You can see here both of them did nice job. Now there is one advantage to negative rake scraper, and I'll show you that here. Let's say I want to make a bead here really fast. And I will use the point of the scraper, and here I'll just use it lightly, and I'm now tilting it up on edge using just the corner, and I can do the same here. Again, this is a little maybe more of a different approach, but you can see here, I'll turn the lathe off. This is a really super nice, pristine bead here using only scraper, and it's super fast. Now you can do it with the gouge, you can roll it with the gouge, but if you want to use maybe one tool, and this just works super nice. Now with the standard scraper you can do it, but it's a little bit more of a challenge, and you have to be aware of the angles and everything. With the negative rake scraper it's a little bit more forgiving. Here, negative rake scraper, so and I'm using the point, much like with the skew. Just finessing that bead so it's nice and perfect. There we go. So that's again super nice, clean. Actually a little rougher spot here on the left, so I'll just clean that up a little bit. There we go. And let's make a dome here connecting two beads. Again, if you watch Steve Jones, you will see much more advanced techniques using scraper, negative rake scraper. But again, this is nice, pristine, big bead, small bead, a little bigger bead here. but that's done really super fast. You don't have to do it with the gouge if you don't want to. And again, this surface here is I mean, it's really too bad to use the sandpaper. Maybe a few tiny little marks which will be gone with the 240 grit in just a few seconds. So now there are benefits of using both of the scrapers. Usually this will last you a longer burr. This one usually around 30 seconds, but depends on the bevel you have and the steel you're using. Now I've heard that maybe D-Way, Thompson and the Carter & Son steels are much more durable, let's say, and you'll have a much longer burr on your scraper, negative rake scraper. Usually that goes as well on the standard scraper, but again, for me the standard scraper works great. But the last few days that I've been playing around with this negative rake scraper, grind like this, really it's a fun way of shaping wood, and that's the important part. Just enjoy the process, enjoy what you're doing here on the lathe, and you'll have a great time, and you'll enjoy using tools. Doesn't matter which tool it is. So you can see here the surface straight from the gouge is super nice, pristine, doesn't have any tear out, so that's something to try for using the scraper. Now, using standard scraper on the end grain portion, so we have here the side grain, end grain, rotating per revolution, more actually of the end grain than the side grain. So here, more than on the side grain, here is much more important to have that negative 90-degree angle here with using standard scraper when you approach here where the end grain is. So if you use scraper lightly, you can still see I'm getting nice ribbons of shavings, I'm getting dust, and I want to be as light as I can. So let's see the surface here. I'm expecting maybe a smidge rougher than the gouge, although I'm not seeing that. It's again really nice surface here in this area. So that was here on the right standard scraper. And here on the left we're going to use this negative rake scraper, which still has the original burr. Both had the original burr. So have a little trail. Again, light touch. So that noise is, I'm getting a little bit more of aggressive. So just letting that burr on top of the, so just letting the burr do the work is doing a really nice job. Again, you get this powdery stuff, and the surface, again, it's super nice. Now, maybe here you can see this portion is a little bit rougher, or maybe a slightly different shade of color versus this, and let's see if that's the case all the way around. It is. So this portion on the left using negative rake scraper is just a little bit more of a shinier surface than on the right, but I can still use the standard scraper but tilt it up on edge. Now it's what I would call actually a negative rake scraper when you're using standard scraper. Doesn't matter if you have this negative angle here, because these sides are parallel and you have a single bevel, it still wants to feed itself in. That's the major, again, advantage of the negative rake scraper versus standard scraper. That's a self-feeding aspect of the scraper. So if I'll tilt the scraper, standard scraper, up on edge, now I'm using as a shear scraper, but again I'm not, now it doesn't want to self-feed itself, it's much difficult to get it to dig in. And I'm getting again nice dust. Show you this a little better. Again, it's a nice, super clean surface. Doesn't need much in terms of sanding, but again, it's not as shiny as this one. Now I can use the negative rake scraper up on edge to get it more of a sheer scrape again. You'll see this will work again super nice. Actually it's getting quite dull, so I'll use a middle portion, which is kind of risky because I can get a catch. But you can see this works super nice. Again, surface is nice and polished. You can see. So there is always sort of an argument for using one or the other. What I'll do is just shape a bowl section or profile, and we'll see what we can do there. So using gouge. Just want to make a little oggy shape. Okay, that will be okay. Now for this application here, I'm going to raise that hook on a standard scraper, so I'll just draw the steel out a few times, and I won't make it too big of a burr, so just light burr, and you'll see using it flat. Again, I can nicely finesse the surface. So that's using scraper flat, and you can see that's again, I mean, you don't have to sand this. It does have a few more marks you can see here, but still I have a shear scraping approach. There we go, so that's again really nice surface. You can see, oh, actually I have a ridge here which I haven't seen. So again, you will see that using standard scraper properly, you will get, now this is some metal dust from my hands. Using the standard scraper properly, you get a really pristine surface which you don't have to sand as much, and that's really the point of this video. So you get to this stage where you don't have to sand with really low grits, the coarse grits. So that's really the point. And I can do the same using negative rake scraper. Now what I'll do is actually just extend the burr, so here from underneath, just raise it from the bottom bevel a little bit, maybe 1 degree or 2, and just give it a few strokes. That will raise another burr, and so this is using it flat. Again, letting that burr do the job. Now I won't be able to squeeze it here, scraper, but I can tilt it up on edge. Again, this is doing super job. Again, the surface is nice and pristine, doesn't have to do much to it, but this is where this kind of scraper would get much better job here. So you can see why this negative rake scraper can be used for beginners, because it's much more forgiving. But again, I would advise to use those kind of safety notes. Let's say if you're using the handle the proper height, so the handle is a little higher than the cutting edge, so you avoid getting like bad habits. And again, this is nice pristine surface, you can see. So what I'll do now is just make the foot here. So here we want to flatten the bottom. I'm using the negative rake scraper at the moment. Now this is a little too small for my bigger chuck, so what I'll do is I'll make another step here. And since I grabbed the standard scraper, I'll just finesse it using it. Okay, so you can see we have another step here which I'll grab with the chuck, but first I want to maybe do something with this portion here. So I just grabbed the negative rake scraper and I'll just make a little taper like so, and I'm going to clean this shoulder. Here is a spindle gouge, and I just want to make a little bead here. Again, you see I'm using now spindle gouge. Doesn't really matter which tool you use if you get the job done. Do not do this at home. Now depends how this will catch. It will bang over and it's not pleasant, so again, do not do this at home. It's maybe a little bit more forgiving like so on the side grain. It will be much worse here on the end grain portion, so we'll see how it wants to bring it down. I was lucky there is nothing here to grab, but with the end grain here it can grab and it will be really nasty, and you can actually see that catch in a 4-way tray video that I did. So now we have a little design what we're going to do here. So just bring the rest up a little bit, so I'm tilted it down on the center here. This is standard scraper, so we can set that in like so and maybe bring it out. And on this scraper I have a little notch here, which is actually grinded off now, but I can make a little 2 grooves like so, quick and easy. You can see nice decoration and a nice clean bottom of the foot here. Now I can do something similar using the negative rake scraper. So again, I'll clean this up. Just clean this portion as well. So you can see that's again nice and clean. And now we can play around with the point of the scraper. So that's nice bead, and make the same 2 grooves. Actually butchered this on the right a little bit, so clean that up and clean this portion here a little bit and make this a little bit more of a cute angle. So that's the shaping done using negative rake scraper. Again, nice and clean. A little fray here. It's not torn green. It's just I can probably take it off using just the shavings. There we go. So that's most of it gone. So again, using scraper as a final tool to get a nice clean surface, so the sanding doesn't take much long. So I won't sand this, I'll just leave it as it is, sort of a tool finish bowl. Or we can use scrapers. This is negative rake scraper. So depends on how you address the bevels on the scraper. It can work really nice. You can see here. So this is the burr with the burnisher. And the surface again, super nice. And using standard scraper again. The shavings ply a little bit differently and higher because it has a much stronger hook, bigger hook. But in terms of surface, should be pretty close, or maybe just a little better. It's pretty close, and again, this is nicely polished surface. You can maybe see in this kind of area here how it sort of gives a little chatoyance. A depth hole, and I'll actually use a spindle gouge. Now we can hollow this out using scrapers. My preferred one, if I would do with scrapers, would be square end scraper, something like this. And just to show you that with the proper techniques and bevel configuration you can do pretty much the same with negative rake. Just have to push a little bit harder because you have two bevels here that doesn't want to sort of go in easily. Hope that makes sense. But wood will give you signs if you're taking too much. So for instance here, you see I'm taking way too much, and how it vibrates and screams at me. So that's one of the signs that you really don't want to use at once much of the edge. Sometimes it depends on using what kind of grain you're working with, timber, what kind of scraper you're using. Using all of the edges can sometimes be not advisable, let's say. So here I'm using like 3/4 of the edge. I can use it even more, but this one is quite narrow. I can use the same kind of portion of the bite, let's say half of this scraper, which is 1/2 inch. Again, taking it off quite nicely. Now usually you would use a different kind of profile scrapers. I can thin this down even more, going like so, and the reason I'm going straight in, I'm peeling side grain using the scraper. It's much easier than just go at an angle and then you're facing the end grain as well. So again, much like with the gouge, and again, using gouge here is much more appropriate for the job. Now usually what I like to do before I continue to hollow, I like to address the rim. So do with the rim what you have to do while you have all this timber inside to support it. So here, although it's thin here, I can use the standard scraper if I'm careful about that angle. You can see here, I'm just using a light touch. Getting nice wispy shavings. Still a little bump here, but again I'm supporting the back of the rim here using my fingers, and you'll see here the surface nice and clean. Again, nothing stopping you from sanding. Now what I want to do using scrapers is I want to show you, usually when you have a thinner rim like so, you would not go with the standard scraper inside like so. If it's really thin, then you can split it in half and split your bowl actually in many pieces, and that's not good. So the negative rake scraper will allow you to make, or let's say finesse this portion quite happily. Even if it's a little thinner bowl. Now I'm actually in the way, and although this actually, I hope you can see that the scraper actually is almost a perfect curve here. It doesn't want to catch because of that two angles here. And what I'll try to do now, this steel here is much less quality than the other one, so don't expect to last the burr as long. As you can see, you can nicely finesse the curve. You can see a little burnish mark here as well. Now actually that will be a good opportunity to show you how I would use a standard scraper. Again, the surface here on the parts that I've cleaned with the negative rake scraper is super lovely, and there is not much to it that should be done. but this burnish mark here is quite, or actually it's more like a very fine torn green, so I have to deal with that. But using the standard scraper, I will show you how I do that. So I'm not sure, so this scraper, this is 10 mil, it's much bigger than it should be for this kind of application, but not sure how the burr is on. It looks okay, looks fine. So you can see this portion works super nice and clean, but here on the rim where it's a little bit thinner, if this is especially even thinner bowl, this isn't extremely thin, but just for the demo purpose, just want to show you, or let's pretend this is way thinner than it should be. I'll tilt the scraper, standard scraper, up on its edge. Now again it's acting more like a negative rake scraper. It doesn't want to interfere much with the wood, and I can now clean lightly. Again, not sure how this portion of the scraper doesn't feel great, so I'll just resharpen it a little bit. So I have a fresh burr on this standard scraper, just to get this nice and clean up to the rim. Again, light touch. Now ideally you want to get this nice and clean with the gouge, and that's usually my practice. I try to avoid using the scrapers here at the rim, but if I have to use it, I would use it tilted up on its side and finesse everything, and get nice clean curve. Let's see how that looks if we removed all of that imperfection. And yeah, that's again super clean surface here, really sanding minimum. And now the way I would attack this hump here in the middle, again using scrapers. This is now pure side grain portion here, much like on the very bottom of the bowl. And again, I can use a standard scraper or negative rake scraper. This is standard. Or I can use negative rake scraper. Now I don't like flat bottom bowls. I don't like, for instance, that it goes to the side like so and then perfectly flat to the rest of the portion here. I like to have it at least. It doesn't have to be the same curve. The curve can interchange, much like a you know, like a water hose. It's not the same curve all the way, but it's nice fluid curve. So that's what I will do here. So dig it in a little bit more in the middle, and just blend these two together. Now here, this one is much too straighter for this task, so I'll use this one and just blend this. And you can see how this works super nice. Now I have a little lump here, so I'll remove actually a little bit more wood here. I can hear it's still solid. I'm not super thin in the bottom. And nicely blend it to the side. Now that doesn't feel much better, so I'll use this scraper. Now this is way thicker, so I'll drop the rest a little bit down. Again, a light touch with standard scraper, just blending the two nicely. that feels a little better. Yeah, that will be sanded out quite quickly. So again, I'll take it out and you'll see the tool finish. So you can see nice fancy little bowl. Now the outside, I could take a little bit more of a time and just finesse this. This isn't a lump or anything, it's just sort of a scoring line. And again, this will sand out really fast. And the inside, again, this is tool finish. Try to get this on the right light so you can see there is no tear out, no torn grain, and I've only used the scrapers to finesse the inside. It's all super nice. And I know this video maybe is a bit confusing, to say at least. Why again compare negative rake scraper to standard scraper? Just want to show you that even in my work, I'm not like deciding on sides. I don't care about that. Again, I've been enjoying using for the past few days this negative angle negative rake scraper, especially for this kind of details here. Again, try to show you this in close-up. You can see these are really super nice. It doesn't really need sanding at all. So there's benefits and there are downsides to every tool, and that goes for these two types of scrapers. Again, the angles, just have to play around. This is again a good start, and Steve Jones is using it all of his career, and his granddad and great granddad use it as well. So take it for what it's worth. Again, you are responsible for your own safety, so dealing with these kind of sharp tools and approaches and everything, you saw a little bit different things that I've done with this scraper. So if you're not comfortable using that kind of stuff, by all means use different tools and different approach, and that's the beauty of turning. And just enjoy turning wood, do it your way, and just enjoy it. And thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.